Hello from inside Arizona. I'm Michael Bryan. I'm here with my friend and co-host Andrew Sheasley, and we're talking today about the DHS shutdown and specifically Representative Juan Ciscomani's role in that shutdown and the rhetoric that he's using to try and escape responsibility for something that is entirely within his wheelhouse to control. You want anything there, Andrew?
No, let's just get on with Jim Sharpe's interview and see what Ciscomani dug himself into.
Yeah, Ciscomani recently appeared on the Arizona Political Podcast, and Jim Sharpe interviewed him, and he had some things to say that I can't agree with.
Middle Eastern conflict. We've got a lot of things to talk about with our guest on the AZ Political Podcast this week. That's Arizona Republican Congressman Juan Ciscomani. Welcome, Congressman. For those who don't know, when Juan Ciscomani won the election for Arizona's 6th congressional district, he became the first Mexican-born naturalized American to represent Arizona in the U.S. House. And you represent a district that's pretty moderate. I mean, you represent several rural conservative counties, but you also represent part of a urban, fairly liberal one, and that's Pima County. And you barely won both of your elections. So does that color your approach?
Well, first, let me talk about the district. The district is about 1/3 Republican.
You want to skip all this?
I do want to just quickly point out that he is giving Ben Shapiro vibes right now.
Yeah. Yeah, he kind of is. You want me to skip to the point where they're talking about DHS specifically?
Yeah, I haven't seen any of this, so I do not know what comes next. So if you want to skip, you can.
Yeah, they're going to talk a bit about Iran. So we'll skip through that.
And I'm sure you hope it doesn't go back to being Democrat, right?
Yeah.
Now, you probably know this, Jim. I've never been for shutdowns of any type, of any way, any shape or form. It doesn't benefit the citizens of our country. It doesn't make the job of the government easier to execute either. And it's actually more expensive. So nobody wins with a shutdown.
Okay, all right. Well, number one, I got to call bullshit on that because, he is like a MAGA voter. He votes with the MAGA caucus 100% of the time in Congress, including for the big beautiful bill or whatever the hell Trump was calling it, his big budget omnibus that was earlier this year, which included a ton of cuts that the Democrats simply couldn't stomach. And so that led to the shutdown was this extremely MAGA budget bill and policy bill that Trump shoved through with a party line vote. And that was what, hung it up in Senate where they had to get it beyond the filibuster and gave us the opportunity to actually block some of it, at least temporarily. We did eventually come to an agreement, but that led to the House Republicans adopting a budget, a continuing resolution on the budget through the end of 26 that did not include DHS because we wouldn't budge on ICE. So they cut out the entirety of DHS from that continuing resolution in order to have, leverage that we will see in a few minutes that they're now using to browbeat us about that.
Yeah, it's just at the end of the day that same hot potato that was occurring in December and January, just now limited to just all of DHS.
Correct.
On any level. I opposed a full shutdown the Democrats had us in last fall, and I oppose this one. The Democrats, again, have us in right now. So,
okay, the Democrats have us in because they wouldn't agree to things that were absolutely unacceptable to us, and we felt harmed our constituents and the nation in serious ways, including, I would point out, the subsidies under the ACA, and we weren't going to accept those billions and billions of dollars of cuts to the ACA plans that would leave, it unaffordable for millions, literally millions of Americans, including hundreds of thousands right here in Arizona. And so when he blames this all on Democrats, of course, that's political rhetoric.
And the GOP ended up voting that down, as I believe part of the agreement to end the original filibuster was a vote in the Senate.
Yeah.
And then they just voted it down in the Senate, which isn't that great of a deal winning for Democrats. But nonetheless, It shows that the GOP does not care about healthcare in any state, but
they were able to
here
force our hands politically. But they own that. To blame Democrats for anything here when Republicans control both the House and the Senate and the presidency is just nuts. I mean, it's like a cop saying, "Yeah, I hit him in the head, but he stepped in front of my baton." It's crazy.
That's not anything new in terms of my position. What is new is that now I'm basically spearheading this effort to open this back up, because this is the bill that I worked on as a vice chair. Mm-hmm. So the bill that it stands right now is to fund Homeland Security. And what a lot of people at home may not fully understand is what is within Homeland Security. So yes, we have ICE and Border Patrol, and we have Customs and Border Protection. All that is on there, and that's what most people know. But we also have CISA, which is cybersecurity. We have the Coast Guard. We have FEMA, which is for emergencies. We have TSA, obviously for the airports. We have Secret Service as well in there. So there are 10 different jurisdictions and agencies that get funded out of Homeland Security. The Immigration Department as well. So all these different things that are in there, that's what's not being funded because they're trying to punish one aspect of that.
Okay. So let me just point out something that he skipped over quite quickly, and that he essentially disclaims any responsibility for, is that he is vice chair of the House Appropriations Subcommittee on Homeland Security. And that's why he's taking point on this, this bill to reopen all of DHS, including ICE, at current funding levels, which is absolutely unacceptable to Democrats, and in fact is unacceptable to a lot of his own caucus in the Senate, because the Senate, with Republican support, passed a bill that would fund all of DHS except for ICE, including, Border Patrol, CBP, Coast Guard, TSA, all of that would be funded with this bill that is a Republican bill. But yet the House will not take it up because Mike Johnson, the speaker, has his marching orders from Trump, and Ciscomani here has his marching orders from Mike Johnson as the vice chair of that subcommittee. So that's why he's spearheading this bill and why he's making this media push to make it seem like it's Democrats' fault.
Is completely irresponsible, and I don't support for that. So that's what's on the table. We're going to vote on this tomorrow. The exact name of the bill is Pay Our Homeland Defenders Act. It's my bill that we're bringing up tomorrow for a vote. This would fund Homeland Security as a whole, not pick and choose what do you want and what you don't want to fund within Homeland. We need to fund the entire area so that we can secure our nation.
So you're not for the Senate plan as it is right now, the one that senators came from the White House and said, hey, it looks like we got the support of the president on this one, but also I'm hearing that President Trump wants the Save America Act to be passed first. I just want to make clear, you're not for any funding of Homeland Security unless it also includes ICE in that funding.
Well, we don't have any plan on paper that will define that, right? In order for me to
dodged the question quite nicely. The answer is, yeah, I'm not going to support anything that doesn't include ICE. Despite the fact that Trump signed off on it, despite the fact that Senate Republicans signed off on it, they transmitted it to the House, and they simply won't take it up. Instead, they're doing this, test vote, I guess, to see, how the Democrats will we'll react. Will we support it, or will we stick fast?
Take a position on that. I would actually have to see the plan. It's all speculation what the Senate's going to do. What I do know for a fact,
it's not speculation what the Senate's going to do. It is in fact a fact that they already did it. So bullshit.
Yeah. Yes, Mike. I also looked up the bill that he introduced. It did pass the House, so it does seem like all of Arizona's Republicans across the state are walking lockstep here, and. Yeah, it's just to see all that ICE has done in 2025 and to the second Trump administration, and not think that there might be a need for reform or some sort of limitations. To be okay with all of those deaths, with all of that trauma, and not be willing to discuss any sort of compromise, any sort of
no reforms. Zero.
Yeah, no reforms. It's honestly sickening that this is our representative down here in Tucson.
Yeah, it's the most mega positions possible. And it clearly indicates that he's 100% okay with how ICE is operating in our communities, including right here in Arizona, up in Phoenix, here in Tucson, across the state. ICE agents are currently abusing people's civil rights and locking people up without charge, without recourse in ICE detention centers under deplorable conditions that certainly don't meet the Eighth Amendment.
Yeah, and it even goes beyond that because ICE is kind of the front runner now of the surveillance state that's growing in the U.S. They are using things like flock cameras that can be purchased either by private companies or by local police departments. And then if police departments have agreements with other local police departments to share information, but then those police departments have agreements to share with ICE, ICE then get access to another police department's flock cameras to surveil citizens, protesters, not just anybody that they should be going after, right? So it isn't just there's been 2 people killed. It has been they are turning us into a surveillance state where if you dissent, the government knows. And he's okay with this without any subject to reform. And that is crazy to me.
Yeah, I mean, clearly he has no respect for our Constitution or or citizen civil rights. It's we have no King's Day coming up tomorrow, and there are going to be helicopters flying overhead. Those are not police helicopters; those are DHS helicopters. And you can be sure that they have high resolution cameras on board, and they're going to be watching these protests and trying to identify people who turn out to these protests.
I mean, that would be the more inefficient way. The efficient way is that they can, in their cars, they have a way to determine your individual cell phone computer IDs, and then they can use that information to backtrack who you are and where you've traveled based off of that cell phone ID.
Yeah, not to mention they have high-speed license plate readers in the vehicles. They have what's the word? Face recognition software running on their phones from Palantir. So they just run up on people and stick the camera in their face and put them in a federal database willy-nilly with no warrant, no nothing, no regard for our civil rights.
And that app isn't even all that accurate, from what I understand. No. It's supposed to tell them who they think they're, or be like, this person looks like this person we're trying to arrest. Yeah. When in reality, they can do it on the same person over and over again, and the app will just basically give them a random face almost.
Yeah, you ready to go on?
Yep.
Is what the next thing that we'll have an opportunity to make a decision on will be on this Homeland Security bill on Thursday that funds everything. Now the talks, like you said, it's been said, hey, let's fund everything within the bill, and then we can fund Border Patrol and ICE and all that in another effort on reconciliation. That's what is being said. I'm not in these Senate rooms. Obviously, I'm in the House, right. So I don't know exactly what they're proposing, the details on that, the timing, or actually something on paper that we can consider. So that right now is
well, he will be sitting in that room during reconciliation. Now that, basically the Senate has a version which funds everything but ICE, and the House has a version which funds everything, including ICE. There's going to be a reconciliation commission between the two houses. And as the vice chair of the House Appropriations Subcommittee on Homeland Security, he's going to be in that room.
More of a proposition. What the Senate has had the opportunity to do is to vote on this bill to fund everything. So all the talks, Jim, of like, hey, let's fund this and that. There's a way to fund it all. There's a way to pay TSA agents right now, and that's the only thing on the table. You could wish there would be a bill that could do this or that, but there isn't anything like that on the.
There is something like that on the table. The Senate's version, which funds everything but ICE, as I have to say ad nauseum because he keeps lying about this fact.
Table that we can consider. And that's why I called this morning in the press conference with leadership and Senators Mark Kelly and Ruben Gallego to do the right thing. They, again, are getting paid once.
To do the right thing by funding the ICE agents that are killing Americans and violating our rights willy-nilly. And still assert that they are above the law, that they are immune to any legal process.
And during the shutdown, when thousands of people in TSA and the agencies that I mentioned are not getting paid, that's shameful. This is their MO.
I agree. It's shameful that DHS employees other than ICE are not getting paid. And there's 100% only one reason for that, and that's sitting right there on the screen. It's that guy that's responsible for it, despite his protestations otherwise.
You've seen it.
I will state, though.
Sorry, hold on a second. Let me pause it. Yeah.
That I actually think it's really good that Ciscomani had all those ICE agents go without pay. It sucks for the TSA agents, although, of course, every American has a little bit of issues with TSA.
Yeah.
But
I mean, I appreciate the fact that they keep our airlines secure.
Yes. I'm just joking. I'm just joking as far as TSA goes. But as far as the ICE agents goes, the fact that they went without pay, that I have to give props to Ciscomani for having that occur.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for keeping ICE shut down there, Juan. Yeah, you're doing us a big favor, I guess.
These people that are protecting our country, and let's open up Homeland Security. That's what's on the table right now. Could there be different discussions? I'm open to having them, but I support
he's not.
the current bill as it stands because I worked on it extensively.
So the Democrats say they want.
Yep. What I wonder is if this is all just political theater, and
it is. Yeah.
Right, but like if there is going to be something to happen in reconciliation where the ICE reforms are actually finally discussed, or if they're actually just going to go full into reconciliation, whichever House MAGA group represents that and says it's either ICE gets fully funded or nothing for DHS. Like, can reconciliation fail? Like, I imagine both. Yeah. Okay. So
absolutely, which means that the shutdown continues.
Yeah. So that's what I'm curious about.
It's Republicans not agreeing with Republicans in that. I mean, Democrats are going to be in the room because we're part of that bipartisan legislation in the Senate. It required our votes to get over the top. But it also includes a bunch of Republicans. And so it's mainly Republicans negotiating with intransigent Republicans in the MAGA caucus in the House that is the problem. That's the sticking point, because the Senate is ready to fund all of DHS but ICE. The House is not.
Right. But the House is also up for re-election. So they could just be forcing this reconciliation vote just for political theater, not because they actually believe in it. If they shoot down reconciliation, then that means they actually believe in fully funding ICE and everything it's doing. If reconciliation goes smoothly and, the shutdown ends, then that means either the Dems gave in or that this is just political theater and that they were fully willing to compromise. They just wanted to put up a front.
Yeah, no, that's accurate. I think that it's very unlikely that the Democrats are going to fold here.
Right.
More likely
I would hope not.
Republicans will walk away from the table because they're the kind of the minority position on this Senate bill. I mean, you have the one that Ciscomani is running in the House pulled up. Did any Democrats vote yes on that? While you look that up, I'll continue.
Yes.
Take ICE out of this funding is because they want to see reforms there. Do you support any of the reforms that the Democrats are talking about? And let's talk about some of the incidents that led to the Democrats saying, look, we don't like what ICE is doing, including those two shootings in Minneapolis.
Well, first, again, let me go back to this and say that the bill as it stands right now, the one we're voting on tomorrow, has a lot of the input and reforms that they incorporated. Now,
does it? It does not.
That was incorporated and was ready to vote. They wanted more. So clear on that. What they want now is above and beyond what we already gave in with these reforms on them that, quite frankly, they were good reforms. And we said, those make sense. So.
Yeah, and I can guarantee you they are not ones that actually limit the operations of ICE in any way. We can go over the bill in a little bit. If you send me the link, I'll put eyes on it as well, and we can pause recording for a while we both absorb it. But let's continue listening for now. Have you gotten any Democrat votes on that bill?
Nope. It looks like they voted twice, and I believe both times all Democrats voted no.
Yeah, no, that doesn't surprise me even a little bit.
I want to make sure that people don't have the sense here that Republicans are just jamming things through with no.
No, I stand corrected.
Now they want more after these.
Hold on, sorry about that.
I stand corrected. No, there were 4 Democrats in the House that did vote yay on the second one.
Any of them from Arizona?
I would have to. They don't separate by party. It would be a little bit tedious, so let's come back to that.
Okay.
tragic incidents that you mentioned, warrants, for example, there can be a process for that, but those also can be problematic for the enforcement of it. Even
warrants for law enforcement are problematic, according to Juan Ciscomani. You heard it here. Warrants are problematic, despite the fact that they are, in fact, in the Fourth Amendment of our Constitution, required. They're problematic for ICE for some reason.
For local communities, they want more cooperation with local communities and law enforcement. I am all for that. That is absolutely something that needs to happen. These sanctuary cities that avoid and decline to work with local.
By cooperation, he means capitulation by these local communities to whatever ICE wants to do or whatever ICE is doing.
Or having access to or whatever flock cameras that may or may not exist in a locality. And he lives in a sanctuary city. I'm pretty certain he lives in Tucson.
No, and also, I mean, there's also the issue, of course, of ICE going through all the government data, including, Medicaid data and, completely unrelated, health data in order to try and track down people who are eligible to be deported. They're violating our civil rights. They're violating our privacy on a daily basis. And Juan thinks that's just great, and that local communities should roll over, and state AGs and state governors should just roll over and let that happen. Let their citizens be abused. That would be the way to solve the problem, in Juan's view.
Enforcement are putting people in danger. If these criminals will be turned in to ICE from the local jails.
And here's the thing: these criminals, most of the people we're talking about here are not criminals. They have no pending criminal charges. They have no criminal record. They're just immigrants. They may not be kind of in regular order. They may be, in fact, undocumented, but they're not criminals.
Right, undocumented is just a misdemeanor.
No, it's not even that.
Oh.
It's not a criminal charge at all. It's a civil charge. So they are not criminals in any sense of the word, but yet he will continue to denigrate these people, these neighbors, these family members who have American relations, who have deep roots in their community, who have started businesses and are vital employees and working our farms and working our factories and working in service industry and working in personal services, like, taking care of our sick and our elderly. These people are criminals, according to Juan. Right.
A lot of this could be prevented, and no need to go in there and apprehend them at their own neighborhoods if local law enforcement would work with them. So,
yeah, no, I mean, that is not the traditional role of ICE. And police know this, So when police say we're going to cooperate with ICE in the traditional fashion, means we will identify people who are deportable in the jails. That's how ICE has normally operated in the past. They would find people who were accused of crimes or had been convicted of crimes in our jails and prisons, and the local police would cooperate with them in ICE agents coming to the prison, picking them up and deporting them. Nobody has a problem with that. I mean, Democrats don't have a problem with that. We don't want criminals who are illegal aliens in the nation either. We're perfectly fine with the way that ICE has operated for the past 20 years. It is now that they're being used as shock troops, not just to terrorize illegal or undocumented alien foreigners, but also to, terrorize our neighborhoods, to terrorize our communities, to violate the rights of American citizens, to go after people who are, they have no criminal intent, they have no criminal record, they have nothing. And to go into our neighborhoods and disrupt our neighborhoods and make our neighborhoods less safe and make American citizens afraid in doing so is not contributing to American security. It's just the opposite. And so this line of rhetoric about, we just want to get the bad guys out, and if people would just cooperate with us getting the bad guys out, that's a ton of horseshit. That's the exact opposite of what is happening in America today. And he knows it. He's just lying his ass off.
It is very sad that is the case, because it's very much like what is happening with ICE is Stephen Miller's pet project just to spread white supremacy in the U.S. and make us a white-only nation to one degree or another. And yet there are people like Ciscomani, not just because he is of Hispanic origin, but just in general, that there are people in this country who are willing to go along with that plan by somebody so vile, just because it keeps them in power, keeps them on the payroll. Because Ciscomani, he knows that if he were to fight back on this, not only would he lose his seat to a primary challenger, he would also have no chance in the lobby industry or any sort of post-secondary career for a politician. So he is in this position to where he either adopts the MAGA line, how awful it is, or he loses his entire career. And he is willing to sell out American citizens for his career. He's either thinking that somehow this is all going to blow over and he can save himself in a post-secondary career, or I don't know what. But it is just sickening and deplorable that somebody can be like that.
And, you know, the filing deadline for any Republican challenger, primary opponent for him in the district, is now passed. He has no opposition. So he is the nominee, regardless of what he says or does. So, you know, what he's doing now is just preserving his in with the MAGA crowd and, you know, making sure that Trump doesn't hate him and want him out because, you know, he wants to continue to have a career, as you point out.
Right.
Ready to go back?
Yep.
I think after the situation hit rock bottom with what happened in Minneapolis, which I've spoken on that tragedy as well. Even the president and Governor Walz at that time had good conversation on how to make that relationship work better between the federal law enforcement and local law enforcement. Of course, and then Tom Homan was promoted into a different role, and then consequently after that, Secretary Noem is no longer the Secretary of Homeland Security, which I welcomed that change strongly. I think that was the right move for sure. And now we have Marguerite Mullen there, which just got confirmed this week, and changes have been making progress.
Damn you, Fetterman! Damn you!
yeah. Some of it. We need to primary that guy.
But that's a Pennsylvania issue, not an Arizona issue.
Yeah, absolutely. But, you know, this whole idea that Trump is working amicably along with the state government in Minnesota is just fucking hogwash and smoke. That is not what's happening. Trump is calling Democratic, you know, leaders in Minnesota terrorists and terrorist sympathizers. You know, this is not an amicable relationship.
You can see that we haven't had any kind of incident like that again, any tragedy like that. So we are moving forward in a much better direction. So I'm open to these.
So the evidence is that we're moving in a better direction because nobody's been shot yet. Okay, right. The ICE has not changed their tactics or their policies or their personnel, except for at the very top. And so, yeah, it's a matter of time, unless Mark Wayne Mullins realizes the political lesson of Noam is that, you know, he needs to be much more subtle about the way he oppresses Americans and American communities, and disrupts and makes less safe their communities. He's also going to be out. So that could happen. It might happen. Might be a useful side effect. But I see no evidence of any willingness of the MAGA faction to make any serious changes to the way that ICE operates. Otherwise, they would have agreed to the Democratic demands, you know, better accountability, better oversight, you know, better record keeping, so that we could actually investigate these instances.
Yeah, and it's worth pointing out that the media hasn't reported on this a lot, but deaths have still been occurring at ICE's hand. They have been, on judges' orders, releasing people miles away in the cold and without any sort of phone or any personal effects, like any wallet that they may have been picked up with. Yeah. So these people, you know, it's winter still. Well, no, it's no longer winter here anymore, but it was winter.
Certainly not here.
But people died in the cold because ICE just dropped them off in a random location, basically. And that is awful. And
there's still shootings, and there's still deaths in custody. And none of that's being addressed. None of that's being investigated. You know, Congress is supposed to provide oversight to the federal agencies, but they're refusing to do any kind of investigation. The FBI, which again is controlled by the Trump administration, refuses to do any investigation or to cooperate with local police in investigating these crimes. So, you know,
here's something that I think I would like to hear your opinion on, because you're a former lawyer.
Mm-hmm.
The ICE, in particular, is heading towards a quite explosive confrontation with the judiciary, because multiple judges have came out and been like, hey, you guys are not doing things right.
Yeah.
We don't want to hold you in contempt, but we've been telling you to do things, and then you guys don't do them.
Yep. That's called contempt.
Yeah. And so it's just like, how can you see all of these situations happen, whether it be the shootings that get public notary, whether it be the confrontations that get public notary, the deaths that don't get investigated, the abuse that doesn't get investigated, or
the violation of civil rights that don't get addressed.
Yeah. Right. Or just the conflict between judges and let's be clear, some of these are Republican appointed judges. Mm-hmm. And the government. And how can one just be all okay and be like, nope, keep funding as is?
Yeah, absolutely. And, of course, the judiciary is reluctant to have a head-to-head confrontation with the executive, because, they don't have a police force of their own that they can really, use effectively. They don't have the power of the purse. They don't really have a leg to stand on except for their moral authority. And, I would say that the Supreme Court has done plenty to undermine the moral authority of the court in recent years.
I mean, they can ruin a bunch of mid-level lawyers trying to work in the government's careers by holding them in contempt. I know from what I've heard.
That would be a blue ribbon moment for a Trump lawyer. Going to jail because Trump doesn't want them to cooperate with the judiciary would be like a big feather in the cap of a MAGA lawyer. So I got to disagree with that.
Maybe, but if they're also being fined at the same time.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, but they'll be held harmless. I mean, Trump, if nothing else, Trump can be counted on to have the back of his criminal co-conspirators.
Are you sure about that?
Well, in most times, if they have something on him, and they can do some good for him in the future, he'll have your back. So, there is that. He is a pretty good, crime boss. I'll concede that.
Discussions and some of the, like I said, some of the ones of the things they propose are doable and we can do them. Some are not, but anyway, we need to get this passed in its current form, and then we can also talk about.
Yeah, so he just gave the game away there. Some of these reforms are doable, some of them are not. Nothing we're asking is anything other than to hold the line on the Constitution, to respect the rights of everybody here in the United States, to respect their civil rights, to respect their safety, to follow normal police procedures, such as, obtaining warrants and, things like that. And like respecting people's civil rights during arrest and investigation. That's not doable in Juan's view.
Forms. I'm open to that.
Right.
No, you're not.
You sit on the House Committee on Veterans Affairs. You also have two major military installations within the counties that your district,
So now we're flipping issues. We're moving more into especially healthcare around veterans issues. I don't know if we want to go into that in this session. We're already at about an hour. So if you want to go ahead and pull the trigger on that and put extra in the can for maybe next week, or if you want to split the episode here or just keep going, up to you, man.
Yeah, let's just end it and keep it on to the one topic. I don't think we really need to go over the bill that Ciscomani put up. It's just a funding bill at the end of the day. But I think I will state on this veteran thing, I think it's because of who's probably going to be the Democratic nominee that veteran stuff is going to become very important to Ciscomani.
Oh, it's not probably. It's definitely. It's definitely going to be Joe.
Nobody else. Well, yeah.
Nobody else made it out.
Yes. I'm just saying that because Joe's a veteran, he's going to talk a lot more about veteran issues coming up to defend himself in that area. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a big weakness of his. Absolutely. And we can talk about that in a separate episode. There's plenty to say about that issue, but it's basically reduces down to, he was for the big beautiful bill that cut tons of money out of the ACA, and it's obviously going to hit not only just generally Americans living here in Arizona. Hundreds of thousands will lose their health care, but many, many thousands of those are in fact veterans and their families who are going to be.
And because of his vote on that, many went without pay during the DHS shutdown.
Yeah, I mean, what it boils down to is he says shutdowns do not punish politicians; they punish families, workers, and communities. I 100% agree with that. He's correct, but that's exactly what his party did when they made the decision to strip DHS out of the continuing resolution, and it's harmed thousands and thousands of working families here in Arizona directly. Those who work for Department of Homeland Security. But indirectly, all of us who our safety is reduced as a result of this. We're more open to foreign attack as a result of this. We're more open to terrorist attack as a result of this.